Meanwhile, the state Georgia has now appealed a judge's order allowing Saturday voting this weekend for the U.S. Senate runoff. So that means as counties are preparing to hold early voting on Saturday, just 5 days away, the state appeals court could rule the polls need to stay open, or stay closed rather. 11 Alive Joe Hinkey has details on why that is not likely. Joe?
Well, Ron, I'm told traditionally when it comes to elections, courts try to stay away from making last-minute rulings that can create confusion and negatively impact voter turnout. That is one reason the state's appeal is unlikely to lead to Saturday voting being canceled. The Georgia Attorney General's office filed its appeal this morning, asking for an emergency ruling to stop Georgia counties from holding early voting for the U.S. Senate runoff this Saturday. Here's how we got here. Shortly after we learned the race was headed to a runoff, the Secretary of State's office issued this bulletin to counties that state law does not allow for Saturday voting after a state holiday on a Thursday or Friday. Several Democratic groups and later Republican groups sued, arguing the law does not apply to runoffs.
Certainly, this is a urgent situation.
Fulton County Superior Court Judge Thomas Cox held a hearing last Friday and ruled Saturday voting will be allowed. In its appeal, the state argues changing the schedule at this late hour only serves to disrupt the ability of county election workers to staff polling locations and do the necessary preparations for the election, disadvantaging voters in those counties which have less resources and ability to find staff at the last minute over a holiday weekend.
You don't want to sow chaos or confusion right before an election.
Anthony Michael Kreis, assistant professor of law at Georgia State University, says what is called the Purcell principle directs courts to not change election rules too close to an election. It's one reason he believes the state's appeal won't be successful, as counties have already begun advertising Saturday voting.
Giving people information they can vote on Saturday, then a few days ahead of time, right, reverse course would be inconsistent with that.
In 2020, the state allowed counties to hold early voting on Saturday, December 26th, the day after Christmas, for that year's Senate runoff. Kreis sees that as another reason why the state's appeal won't be successful.
The state's reversing on Saturday voting, that's not, constant, right? So they've introduced the chaos, they've introduced the confusion. So the court should really err on the side of continuity, but also in favor of the voters, right? Because there's really no harm in one additional day to vote.
And the Georgia Court of Appeals could rule on the state's appeal at any time. So far, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, and Rockdale are some of the counties that have announced they will hold Saturday voting. I'm told during a 6 p.m. election board meeting tonight, Gwinnett County will decide if it will also have the polls open this coming Saturday.
All right, Joe, thanks a lot. To see more information about this issue, just click on this story on 11alive.com.